I'm Alex Berkshire. I'm doing RPI Mobile up for Android. Just a quick recap, if any of you didn't remember my presentation like 2 or 3 months ago, I'm just trying to take the iOS application and port all of the existing features to Android. Right now, just getting right into it, my current status, I have a bunch of stuff working right now. I have the RPI Twitter feeds working, I have the RPI Laundry Alert, machine status working, I have the athletic news working, and I'll get back to that later. I have the RPI events feed, the RPI YouTube feed, and I got Troy local weather, which I think is kind of a nice touch. Just to contrast that with the existing iOS features, they have news feeds, Twitter feeds, they have the athletic rosters and schedules and results, which aren't immediately apparent on the website. I don't know exactly how they're getting that information, but I will get that working as I look more into how the iOS application works. They have the laundry machine status as well. The shuttle tracker. The shuttle tracker on their GitHub, on the RCOS GitHub, has version 1.1.3, and on the Android market they have version 1.1.4, which wouldn't be a problem if I could get the version on the GitHub to compile and run correctly.
Okay,
So
the person who did this is Brian Mikalski. If you send me an email, or he is reachable. Brian's email address is Ben knows, Ben has been in touch with Brian, and I know Brian. So.
yeah, hopefully it'll just be a matter of pushing the last version up to the GitHub, but yeah, I'm gonna reach out to them, try to fix that. The student directory is just a matter of my scheduling and getting a student directory to work. That's very well documented. And they have the video feeds as well. I'm just going to go right into a demo for you guys. One moment. I'm going to jump right into a demo because I think it's fun. I'm running in the emulator, which definitely completely scales the RCOS projector. And give me a moment. Open. So, I'm doing a demo. When you load it up for the first time, it loads the weather in the background and gives you this nice little navigation shade with all of the different services. So if you click back behind it, it shows you the local weather, which I thought was kind of a nice thing to have in the beginning, just not any particular important information.
Is it the current weather?
This is the current weather right now. Yeah, it's 72.2 and open weather.
It's 72 degrees.
Is it?
Got some rounding errors.
But yeah, I'm trying to, part of my roadmap is to increase is to work on improving the UI, and part of that is making the weather right justified so that you can see it. Then I have the laundry status, and I'd just like to take this moment to let us all appreciate the wonderful Android development emulator, which does all of the UI. It renders all of that in near perfect real time, but man, the network stack has some work to do. So we're just gonna sit here and kind of appreciate this. While I'm going over this, so here we go, it loads all of the laundry machines, which I thought was pretty cool. Fun fact, the Laundry Alert, while I'm loading Twitter, I'll talk to you a little bit about Laundry Alert. They do not have an external API, and the iOS application had a server up that scraped the web page and pulled down all of the laundry status, because although they do not have an external API, they're very nice to hard code all of the information into each web request as they send it to
It is
you.
done by Kenny Chung, right?
One more time?
Kenny Chung is the one who did this laundry alert, right?
Mm-hmm.
He graduated, but he's still in touch.
Yeah, but I'm pretty proud of my Android implementation.
So you solved the problem.
Yeah, I solved the problem, and I'm pretty happy about it because
You should tell him, if you solve the problem, you should tell him.
all right, get right on that. Yeah, but I'm pretty happy. There we go. The Twitter feeds load, which is pretty exciting. I'm also running this app for the first time, so it is caching all of the images for the first time. We can go over to the athletic feeds, which kind of interesting. We should load up pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm pretty happy about it because the iOS implementation had its own separate server scraping the web pages, and then the actual code was about 500 lines of code to pull it all down and parse it and do all of the things they wanted with it. And I was able to do it without a server in about like 120 lines of code.
Is it ready to go now? Is it ready to go? Some people can.
Be patient. There's still more presentation. The athletic feeds, I'd really love to have a summary, but RPI is not very smart about the way they do RSS. RSS has a whole nice tag for a summary of an article that is just blank. I have the RPI events feed. I'm looking at adding this right now. Once it loads, it's just going to be a list of all of the events. I'm looking at adding a calendar view that'll show you each day. You can drill down to each day to see. The RPI events feed has support for pulling, I do like that emulator name. The RPI events feed has support for pulling a specific date range, so it's not going to be very hard on that matter. It's just because Android doesn't have a built-in calendar widget. I've got to write all of that from scratch. I was very happy I finally added support for refreshing of these views, and now it shows you a nice little indefinite progress spinner. So there we go. It pulls up all of the events for you, and we can just scroll forever through the next month of events. And those are the first 5 features that I have working. I also have the RPI video feed, and that just opens up the external YouTube app. And since right now the developer emulator doesn't have any of the Google apps installed, it'll just crash the app. If you're running it on a phone that doesn't have the YouTube app installed, it'll open up the Play Store, and it'll let you download the YouTube app. But because the emulator doesn't even have a Play Store, it's very lost very fast. All right, so let's go back to my presentation here. So, just going over the app structure a little bit. I've done up the whole, because I think it's very important that this is a application that is able to scale, and that people who work on it later on are going to be able to jump into it very quickly. I've made it all fragment-based, which is very important. In Android, after 4.0, they've tried to make everything move on to fragments. So instead of having all of your apps be individual intents that can only have one on the screen at one time, you have these fragments that are nice wrappers for applications. And so then it's very easy if you wanted to change your UI around, if you wanted to have a tablet UI that had multiple things on screen at once, or if you wanted to export it to an external application and just have laundry be one application, then it's literally just copy and pasting the code into a new project. You don't have to deal with any of the external dependencies. And it also makes the code quite a bit easier to read, because when you have your application done just on intents, it's essentially like you're making a web page. You have entire complete applications that link to each other and just happen to all share the same icon. And this is a lot easier to do things like that navigation shade I would have to re-implement that on every single screen. And right now the way I have it is the navigation shade is implemented on the top view, and then when you hit it, it just changes the view underneath. So I don't have all of that code copy and pasted into every single screen. I've also simplified the code structure immensely. If you want to take a peek at the iOS code, it's quite a bit. All of the applications are kind of done up as their own separate applications. If you think of how RPI Mobile works, it essentially is 10 or 11 different complete applications. It's a weather app, it's a news feed, it's a Twitter feed. And so I've tried to make it so that if you understand how one of these works, then it's very easy to read the code. And so I've literally just done it so that every single application has its onCreate method that initializes all the variables. It has a download method that pulls in all of the data and that talks to the external websites. And then it has an adapter that takes this data and displays it to the screen, which is very important because if you want to go in and upgrade it and you say, oh, laundry alerts changed, the code that pulls in that information is completely independent from all the UI code. I'm very happy about that after going from what the iOS application was. I've also been very, very sure to implement the action bar, which if you've ever used an Android phone and you have Android 4.0, you'll see this in a lot of applications. It's at the top. If you read the Android UI guidelines, it's very important. It brings a lot of things together, and just kind of glossing over it. If you download Action Bar Sherlock, it's a wonderful compatibility package that lets you use it pre-Android 4.0, which is good because 40% of Android phones are pre-Android 4.0. I'd love to give you guys a whole 30-minute talk about it, but that's essentially it. The roadmap, what I'd like to do in the next week and a half of RCOS is I'd like to cache the saved data so that if you have, you open up the laundry application, you open up any of these things that take a little bit longer to load, they give you the information that you last had and then load the new information in the background. I'd like to implement preferences so that you can change different things when it's just functionality that I'd like the application to have. I need to improve the UI quite a bit. I just made something that works now, and if I want something to release, I want to just sit down for a couple of hours and make that look nice. I need to document all of the code, as is the fundamental problem of every computer science project ever. And then I'm hoping at the end of the week or the beginning of next week to have all of this fleshed out and have a nice public beta that everyone can use and mess around with. And so that's it. I like clapping. Yes.
So how fast are you scraping the websites?
So if you run it on a phone, it runs really fast.
How often? Like rate, not.
Oh, I have every application doing it. The client is doing it as many times as you press that refresh button. And the justification being that if you were to go to the website, you can just refresh the website a bunch of times, and all I'm doing is refreshing the website a bunch of times. As of now, it just loads when it first loads, and then it stays there until you hit the refresh button.
So I'm just going to tell you a small story about how I used to write this Bitcoin mining application. I scraped something like 20 or 30 websites, and I was refreshing and getting active data, but you should have a contingency plan for when you accidentally get a ridiculous number of users and the websites you're scraping think you're a denial of service attack and freak out. So just like a heads up that that does happen. And I don't know if you want to have a caching server or something else, but you might want to research that.
I hope that if I get 100,000 users, if I get a lot of users and something stops working, I can call up Shirley and I can say, yo, can you spin up a server for me? Can I get some union compute time or something? I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Right now the app structure is done up very easily so that I could just pull out that bit and replace it, which I'm very happy about. Yeah, I'd also just like to go over that. On the phone, all of the performance is great. I made sure that everything loads within a couple of seconds on the phone. The emulator has quite a few problems. Yeah.
It's going to be available on the Google Play Store.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
put it out on the Google Play Store.
It's great fun.
The RPI directory may need some work because I think it's dated, so we have to make sure that Christine is the one who did it.
Yeah, the RPI directory has their own little Android app that works fine. As
Yeah.
checked.
The directory, it has to be stayed. I do not know how easy.
Yeah, RPI directory has a really nice JSON front end that is very easy to use and very well documented, which I was very happy about.
The backend is what I'm worried about.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, if we break it, then I'll send something nice in there.
Have you tested it on like 3 or 4 year old molasses speed Android phones?
I tested it on the emulator down to Android 2.1, which is the farthest that I support. And that's, if you look at the pie graph, by the way, hey, you guys want to look at the pie graph? If you look at the pie graph, that's most of what, this is 4.2, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3, 4.0, 2.3, 2.2, 2.1, and then everything below that isn't on the graph. 1.6 is 0.1%. So I've tested it down to that version to make sure that it runs, that everything actually works. It might be slow, might be a little slow, but I'm not doing anything terribly complex with views. I'm not doing anything terribly complex in the background. There's nothing incredibly computationally intensive.
thank you.